regenerative coffee has at its roots regenerating the soil. Indeed, why, we would ask, why do we need to regenerate the soil? Because the soil is this eternal, infinite resource that provides for our crops. And indeed, it's not true. You can just ask farmers around you, and the data are very, very clear about it. We have been in a decline of fertility for decades, and this is also why we have a so-called synthetic, conventional, chemical agriculture. Because to sustain the yields, we have to put more fertilizers. But it goes along as well with the loss of fertility that is held where? In the soil. So if you want to have a regenerative coffee, you need first to regenerate the soil. After having installed our food system for decades and with the special way of managing agronomically with no residues at all, we have indeed tapped into the saving account that is our soils. What more important it is to grow our crop than the soil? Most farmers will tell you, well, of course, they know that their main assets is the soil. So regenerating the soil needs to be done in replenishing this saving account that was initially built by the forest. Because before we installed our food system, well, guess what it were? Well, we had a forest. And the forest, by its own functions, which means this whole life cycle of growing, then breaking, dying, decaying, has built what we know as humus. So the humus has been somehow extinguished for the number of years that now we're doing this modern agriculture. And we can say that it's a couple of 100 years so far. We have to think of a strategy to enable the restart of this soil fertility, soil to be regenerated. When we do this, we will also engage in restarting the natural nutrient cycling that that the soil has, that is held and accomplished by soil microbiology. Conventional agriculture is wiping out most of this soil life that is responsible, indeed, cycling the nutrients that comes from the organic matter that initially were coming with this humus that the forest had produced. So we make sure that our crops grow. And how do we actually make sure that we have the soil being regenerated? By regenerated the ecosystem around. As we understood, initially the humus was built up by forest. So if we want to replenish our soil fertility as it's supposed to be, well, we need to use the way that forests were initially working before our crops were. So we make sure that we replenish that soil. So how do we do that? Well, we get our inspiration from the forest, and today this has been turned into an agronomical management way that it's called dynamic agroforestry. By doing so, you will have other trees around your coffee that is indeed supporting the growth of your coffee by providing shade sometimes, but also a return of organic matter down back to your soils. You will, by the way, enjoy a faster return and cycling of these nutrients for your coffee. One, you regenerate the soil. By two, regenerating the ecosystem around it by mimicking the forest functions that we still have standing in some place of the world. And three, you would also, by doing so, you will also regenerate the producer's economy. You and I love to have this beautiful organic regenerative coffee, and first thing first in our morning. And by indeed changing the agronomical management for growing this coffee using dynamic agroforestry principle applied to coffee, well, you will indeed decrease the amount of inputs that is so costly to the farmer. So by doing this, you are also contributing in regenerating the farmer's economy. And also the last point is saying that as we help these people transition to this new system, those producers are also now being transformed into, let's call that, the hearse and the coffee and the ecosystem guardians. So you make sure that indeed they get an extra price for enabling themselves to actually grow this coffee. And by doing so, we are also making sure that we will be rewarding those producers that are actually enabling the whole ecosystem to function on an optimal way while we actually produce foods that are indeed used by the human communities.